Hey guys, welcome back to the Practical Training Podcast with yours truly, Mike Bell of Practical Training Professionals out here in Southern Maryland. Some would call it God's country. Today we have on Instructor Zee. All right, Zee Durham. He's got a long legacy of operating in the firearms world, and he's got. I'm not going to tell you his story. We'll let him do that. But everybody, please welcome Zee to the show. Zee, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, Mike. I appreciate you having me, man. Appreciate you reaching out and letting me get in early on the millions you're going to make off your podcast. I'm on the ground floor.
Yeah, you know what? That's what I forgot. I should have asked you for one of them disclaimer things or something, right? So when we make Joe Rogan money, Zee doesn't come knocking on the door saying, "Hey, buddy, where's my piece of that?"
Hey, pretty sure I had some intellectual property going on. Yeah.
So Zee, so for the audience, Zee and I were just chatting a bit before we got on here, and I was kind of letting them know our philosophy here about why we're doing the podcast, and it really is, and I've said this before, it's to kind of shrink the world of firearms instruction and kind of remove that stigma that, you know, your trainer, he's not a superhero. He's a regular everyday guy, just like you and just like me. And that's what I kind of found appealing about Instructor Zee here is he tells you the truth right off the bat. And down in the show notes at the end of the episode, you'll find some ways to connect with Zee and actually a link to another podcast that Mick over at Carry Trainer does where Zee really gets into the truth. And maybe we'll get some of that from him today. But Zee is he won't say this, but he's no bullshit. He's straight. He's a good guy. He's good at what he does, and he's been around us a long time. So, Zee, can you tell us a little bit about, well, first of all, you tell us whatever the hell you want to tell us, right? But can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into the world of firearms? Like, where did it start for you? Like, when did you pick up your first firearm, and then kind of what happened from there until the time you got into firearms instruction?
Well, so I guess I've had a different type background than most people that I see in the profession. All right, most people that I talk to, even from my military background, a lot of people have this, I don't know, good old boy background. Some of them like, hey, my grandpa and me, I was picking up guns and shooting ever since I was this high, and all this stuff. And I had a scattered childhood, all over the place. And I had touched some guns, and I did, my step grandpa ended up introducing me to rifles and whatnot, but I didn't have that background. I didn't even consider myself military or law enforcement have that potential at all. I never thought about it in my life. So okay. I just wasn't into it. I carried guns and I messed with guns because I had a criminal mindset from a criminal background. And, but doing, I came into the Army at a young age after I decided that I needed to do something because what I was doing sucked. So there I was exposed to firearms. Obviously, I was 11 series at first in the infantry, and then I went to selection and became a Green Beret later on in my career after my first 6 years, and stuck with it ever since. And then you're forced to learn some things, right? Or
yep.
You're using things, so you got to use them. And what it came down to was my particular unit, the way we did things, we were very focused on the firearms aspect because it was a CQB oriented mission that we had, a close quarters battle type mission. So we had to be good with the rifle. We had to be good with the pistol. And in my opinion, CQB kind of forces you to be very good with that if that is your bread and butter, because you're so tight quarters, so close quarters, and we're expected not to miss whatnot in those close quarters. So I just got into it that way, just the typical, it was part of the job thing. And we had to teach each other, being on an SF team. Like when guys come in, people don't know this, but the Green Beret training, the Special Forces qualification course, it doesn't involve a lot of shooting. It's everything but shooting, basically. Like you're doing language, you're doing a non-commissioned officer school if you haven't had it already by the time you get there, and then you're doing guerrilla warfare type stuff. You're learning, you do a small unit tactics course, which is kind of like a mini ranger school for those that know what that is. But it's really about tactics, and you're not doing a lot of marksmanship shooting or specific training just with weapons, unless you're an 18 Bravo, which is a weapons sergeant. But even their training is not about learning to shoot the guns real well. It's just familiarization with a wide array of different platforms of weapons so they can fix them and use them and be that subject matter expert on the team, when it comes down to being in other countries or having to fix something on the fly. So I did all that stuff. And then I got into just I'm a jujitsu practitioner, and did MMA for a while. So I got into teaching that stuff because it's kind of inherent with the culture. Like once you get a certain rank in jujitsu, it's like, hey, you need to help teach these people,
right?
Help teach these other guys. So I adapted that same philosophy with the firearm stuff, right? And then I got out and became a civilian, and I seen this hunger for it. I mean, Instagram was blowing up, and it had blown up by the time I got out in 2016. And there was some subculture of gun people on social media that I didn't know about because I was just off social media for all that time. I had Facebook, but it was like a family oriented type account, just for me contacting close family. And then people showed me that, these guys and this guys, and it showed me all the cool guys on Instagram. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be teaching, I need to be marketing, right? So I need to if I'm going to make it a business. So I got on there and, I didn't know what I was doing. I just freaking was doing whatever. And I'm not one of those guys that are really sensationalized. I don't like to sensationalize a lot of stuff. I'm not an entertainer, I don't feel. So it's hard for me to even do that. But I seen that through social media that there were so many people that were wanting to know stuff. They thought that military background, law enforcement background, whatever was cool. And they were attracted to that. And then you see the potential for people doing silly shit with guns, basically, because they're trying to go too fast too early,
right?
In their training, and they don't know enough. They don't know the reason why we do certain things, or why that the military or people that are trained in certain ways, why they're doing certain things with the gun. Why are you holding it up here versus down here? Why are you loading it like this? Why are you whatever, all the things out there are. And I had some knowledge there. So I started going that way, and I knew enough to implement the guns, and I don't consider myself a gun guy, even. Like some people that have a bunch of guns and they can tell you every caliber, every type of platform out there. And I know a lot of guys like that, and that's great. That's just not me. I don't have the time nor the motivation to be that knowledgeable about guns. I know what I need to know.
Right.
Fundamental information. Right. And I know how to make them work. I know a lot about Glocks. I know a lot about carbine platforms because that's what I had the most experience with, but never was a gun guy, man. So I know that's a long answer for what you asked. No, that's
a great answer.
I just wasn't into it. I just wanted to teach people. I think I got a passion for teaching. I got a passion for wanting people to understand and not sell themselves short for what their potential is, You see so many people that carry guns and they're all about these gun things, but they really just don't know how to use them in the context that they're carrying them for. Like, it's one thing if your context of carrying a gun or owning a gun is just to stand still and shoot a piece of paper from a shooting stand or a desk, and you can do that real well, that's by all means, stick with that. That's great. But if you say that your context for carrying a gun is to protect yourself, you really need to understand what fighting entails, what fighting for your life entails. And so even the basic things like getting the gun out of the holster and then putting it away safely, and then, getting the gun on target quickly. And then how do your trigger finger discipline? When do you put it on the trigger and when do you not? And I know that some people say, well, when you're ready to shoot, but there's some nuances there. Yep. And so all these things, you start seeing that, and it's like, people need to know, like, if you're going to be so enthusiastic about guns, I want you to know the truth about you, right? Which is, don't think that it miraculously something's going to spring out of your ass and make you awesome all of a sudden if you haven't practiced and trained to do the things that you might be required to do when you're fighting for your life. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, what I was kind of whenever I was being rude a minute ago and trying to cut you off, what I was gonna say was, so you came up, you did a tour in the military, several years there, and got out in 2016. But I noticed you were a master sergeant when you got out, senior NCO. What I just heard you saying when you got out there and was looking on Instagram and you were seeing people and you were watching them be hoo-ah and all this gun stuff and, what were they really doing? Maybe they didn't have the necessary training. They were doing dumb shit with their firearms. And you saw that, and instead of just kind of laughing at it and letting it go, you decided to step up and kind of offer some training, some real life shit, man. Understand that everything you just said is right, but what I want to say is I'm a vet. I work with vets. A lot of vets are listening to the show right now. Is there's some shitty NCOs out there that don't give a shit, right? They're there to make rank and then get their payment and then maybe retire and then get out, right? But hearing your philosophy from watching Instagram and saying, wow, there's this lapse here. These people need to be trained. That shows me, and I don't know about your military jacket. I don't know what you got in there, but that little bit of information right there at least kind of makes me think, Zee, that you were a good NCO, a good leader. Right. And you really want to break things down by the numbers for people so they understand the situation every step of the way. They're not skipping steps. Right. They're doing things by the numbers. Right. And that, I commend you for that, man. Bravo. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate that.
Yep. So 2016, decided to get into the firearms training arena. But before that, so I'm assuming you were doing like a MAC or something in the Army and studying jujitsu there and competing there, or did you really get into jujitsu more after you got out of the military?
Well, it was so about 2004 really is when I went to Special Forces and started the training and all that stuff. And then about that time, I was also meeting guys that were into jujitsu heavily. Tim Kennedy, I know everybody knows who he is, right? A UFC veteran,
Yeah.
Green Beret as well. He was actually in the Q course, the qualification course at the same time frame I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And he was into the crowd, in a crowd of people that I was associating with. We wasn't good friends or anything. I'm not claiming that. But he was in the crowd of people that I was associating with in my off time. And they were all had mixed martial arts experience. And I always wanted to. I was just, I was one of those dumbasses that either didn't make time or told myself that I was badass anyway and I didn't need anything. I was going to miraculously be good if I needed it. Right. False confidence or whatever it is. Anyway, so I got to Fort Campbell, back to 5th Group here, where I live outside of Fort Campbell now. And that's where I've served most of my career at Fort Campbell. And there was a gym and I just wanted to fight. So I went in there and I started getting involved with the gym. My wife actually worked at the gym, helping out with the guy that owned it. He's a good dude. He was a vet. And I just got heavily into it that way. And before I ever put on a gi form of jujitsu, traditionally, I had 7 fights in MMA. So I started fighting before I even started really just focusing on jujitsu. And then I broke my knuckle, the only bone I ever broke. I broke my knuckle while I was still on a team, and my team sergeant at the time said, hey, no more civilian shit, right. Private stuff. You can participate in the military tournaments, which I did, but that's it. So I had in the military for the Army, as you probably know, you got to wear your uniform when you participate in the tournaments, and it's just like having the kimono or the gi for jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So you got to learn all those grips, all those chokes, and all that stuff. So I started training regularly in the uniform or the gi. And then 5th Group also contracted 2 black belts. One of the guys that I got my black belt from in jiu-jitsu, him and his understudy were there at our gym every morning, 5 days a week, till 9 a.m. from 6 to 9 a.m. for free. So you go in there, and I mean, SF's a little bit different. So we didn't have organized physical fitness always. So you kind of do what you want as long as you're doing what you're supposed to do. And I would go do that. And I was just getting free training with these guys that were contracted to be in our gym for all these years. And eventually, it was hitting, it was on and off because I would deploy and then come back. And then, so I couldn't have a steady, consistent schedule. But then once I got near the end of my career, 2014, 15, 16, I was doing less operational stuff, more, support type stuff at the battalion level, being that I was a senior ranking NCO and all that, and I wasn't on a team anymore. So I started going all the time. And then that's what really got me into jiu-jitsu. I seen the advantage of, well, I had to do it because I couldn't do anything private anymore as far as competition goes. And then I had to learn how to negotiate that collar so I don't just get choked out,
right?
Even though I was pretty good at grappling in general. And then the more I did it, the more I realized that this is something that I really love to do. Like I'm always you always have to check your ego. It demands humility. It demands it because even in around military base, even if there's a guy that's not that good, everybody's super strong, super athletic, especially near a fifth group. And you get these young fellas. I mean, so everybody's a fight. So it demands humility. You got to go in there and you get tired and and if you suck, you suck. And that's what it is. And there's no lying to yourself.
Yeah.
The proof's in the pudding. And now as I'm 42 years old, so I'm realizing that also, like, this is something that I can, once you get good at jiu-jitsu, there is a niche that you can find while you still practice it that allows you to do it when you're a little bit older, and maybe you can't just be as dynamic as you once were, and you can't get away with just being active as much as you once were, right? So I can do it and slow it down a little bit to where I'm not flying around and being super sore, causing myself injuries, and I hate to be injured because I can't stand just being laid up,
Yeah.
So it allows that culture for jiu-jitsu allows you to slow things down and actually do, we call it old man jiu-jitsu. Do old man jiu-jitsu. If you go fast and move around fast, I don't have to win. I can just still be grappling with you and not win, but I'm still being active.
Yeah, sure.
So it's got a lot of advantages and so many things. Now it's just a part of my life, man. My kids doing it, my son's doing it. I do it. I teach a couple times a week on the side with a gym that's local to me. I don't have time to, I never wanted to get into the gym business. I know it sucks because I know too many gym owners.
Yeah. I've heard that too. And then you end up you end up getting swallowed up by some like mega conglomerate because they'll throw money your way and you have to sell subscriptions and then you're a slave to the contract. Yeah.
Well, it's like anything.
Cool.
They'll make money in it. You got to be mainstream. And if that's not where your heart is, right, then you're not going to have fun doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of the stuff I've heard you say, man, seem like a competitive person, right? I mean, you didn't just enlist and go my route, right? Go be a mechanic. Like you wanted to go be infantry, and then infantry wasn't necessarily enough. You wanted to go SF and Green Beret. And then in there, you were still looking to compete, right? You were fighting on the side and then, competing in the Army competitions. And then after that, you still, even now, you said you're 42, you still want to get out there and compete. Where's that competitive nature come from in you? And I know that's not necessarily firearms related. Who cares, right? I want to know, Zee, like where is that at? And is this something you had to kind of develop for survival or something? Because a lot of people do, right? They put that on as like an ego, like, oh, I'll do this challenge. I'll do this. I'll do that because I don't want anyone to think I'm a bitch, right? Is that part of your story? Like where did this competition, this competitive nature in you come from?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I think, well, one thing I'll say this to begin. Guys like Michael Jordan, if everybody, I'm a sports fan. I'm not as much as I once was, but I pay attention to it in my peripheral vision.
Right.
I don't give it the attention I once did. Like if you ever watch the Last Dance documentary or you watch any documentary about any elite level competitor in their particular field, like there's something in them, right? But there's also a commonality between all of them that I see is like all of them usually have some kind of hard story coming from it, and some of them even in their latter years, in their adult years, they continue to make it hard for themselves. They have problems, right? And I say that to say this, that I think everything has a cost. The guys that are up here, they can be the best at this one particular subject. There's a cost to be paid there. You can't be the best at everything.
Right.
It's not possible. And I know we're humans, right? So to be the best and put all your vision and focus on this one particular area is going to leave everything else vulnerable, right? And I've experienced that to myself, right? So me, excuse me, I'm burping.
Get it out, man.
Well, one of the things that made me competitive is because I didn't believe in myself. You know, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't think I was worth a shit. And I probably wouldn't tell you that, right? Because there's a facade that you got to carry as a man or as somebody that's a survivor mindset child, which I came from a broken family. And I didn't care enough about myself. So it was everything I was doing was trying to prove to me that I was valuable. You know what I mean?
I do.
And nothing was working. The problem with doing that is it does get you some superficial results. So you can be, you know, get a title or get a freaking whatever and get this and that. But the problem with that is it never fixes what the problem is in here by achieving those external things. I mean, that's the human way. We think, and I'm not mad at myself about it. I'm not mad at anybody that goes through this because it has to happen. Wherever that need is inside of you, that's what you're going to chase, right? You can't help it. That was the need I had inside of me that trumped everything. How can I make myself valuable to me? And it took the full extent of my career up. I mean, it took me 40 years of my life to figure out, and I'm still bad at it because it's not an instinctive thing in me to be confident in myself as a person. I built that. It wasn't instinctive. It didn't come as a child. I built it later. But all that time I was being ambitious from day one was all about just me trying to prove to myself that I was worthy of something, right? That was it, brother. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. And that's all it was. Just me trying to prove myself worthy. I had to do this. I had to do that. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? I talk to my wife about this sometimes, and I tell her, like, there's some things I wish I had more memory of, and I wish I had slowed down and smell the roses. Some people say,
Sure.
you know, where you basically just take in the moments. I didn't do that throughout most of my adult life. I'm just now learning in my late 30s and I'm 42 now. Like I said, I'm just now learning to slow down, be in the moment, stop thinking about what's next. That's how I was driven, like most of my life, right? Just driven, and I didn't even pay attention to the shit around me, bro. It feels like such a waste now, but I know that if I didn't, based off of where I started in life, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be here now. So, I mean, better late than never, like they say, right? So
Yeah.
that was it, bro. I was just so ambitious, and it burned inside of me that I had to prove myself to be worthy, you know?
Sure. And you're doing that for yourself. You're feeling that. You're kind of filling that void. And some people chase it with other stuff, right? People chase it with drugs, or they chase it with sex, or they got to get the hottest girl in the room or something like that. And it's something they need inside them to lift themselves up, right? And in a different life, I did I talked to a lot of guys at the VA, even outside of the VA. I talked to a lot of guys that were dealing with like mental health shit, you know? And just from listening to, you know, some of the other stuff that you've put out there on the airwaves, right? I don't know you, Zee, but I have a feeling for how you grew up. And it's not abnormal, right? There's a lot of people that grow up in your shoes. You're not unique. But the reason why that's important is because so many people have grown up in similar situations that there's a science to it, right? There's enough data that you can start to predict some stuff, right? There's this stuff called an ACE score, ACE. You could look into that if you want, but it's called adverse childhood experiences and how that stacks up. And it could actually break down to certain characteristics that you're going to carry with you into your adulthood, and then possibly even give to your children, your propensity for certain sicknesses as you get older, different shit like that all stem from these, what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And what you end up finding out, and guys, we're going so far off of firearms here, but you know what? Tune out if you want to. This is some good, heartfelt shit right here, man. You know, when you grow up in trauma like that, right, your little lizard brain never really develops into that kind of herd brain, and you're in a constant state of survival, and everything is an obstacle that you have to conquer, right? You have to own that everything in front of and about you, because if not, you lose control. And if you lose control, you're going to get hurt again. And that's just part that is subconsciously, it just embeds itself. And those cornerstones of that life get so damn solid that it takes years to break them apart. I'm glad you're on that journey now. But you see it with, like, as you mentioned, you look at all these top performers, these people. I mean, there's a reason they say that diamonds are forged under pressure, right? I think that, I think that people that grew up in these shitty environments, I'm one of them. You kind of have a chip on your shoulder, right? You're the person who's going to understand how to operate in a stressful situation because you've been living in stressful situations your whole life, right? So moving into that next stressful situation feels normal, right? Where other people that grew up with the spoon up their ass, or however you want to call it, right? That's their first experience with stress. They're going to bug out. So, and it takes a long time, and again, I sat in those rooms with men, sharing their story, sharing their heart, and your story isn't necessarily unique, although it is unique to you. There's only one science, right? But one of my buddies said it this way, right? There's like 7.5 billion people on this planet. There's one science, but there's 7.5 billion stories. And to try to categorize them all the same based on one science is just ridiculous, right? Because everybody's story is different.
Man, I never heard it like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so although your story isn't unique in the term, as in, your circumstances were similar to other people's circumstances, your operation inside those circumstances is different. And how you forge your bricks and what defenses you put up in front of you, right, that are going to help you survive that next challenge, that next obstacle. That's unique to you. But yeah. Congratulations, man. I look back, I'm married. I grew up in a situation similar to you. And I look back, I talk to my wife the same way you do, man. I say, she's telling stories about shit that the kids did when they were babies. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I just don't remember. Right. And it's not because I'm a dumb person or because I did
so many things.
Yeah. It's just constantly on to the next thing. Right. And, wise men have said this before. This isn't new to me, but the greatest thing a man can have on his journey is a woman to walk beside him, right? Because that woman, for me, my wife, she acts like a touchstone. When I get out there and I'm lost and I'm in my mess and I'm fucking working way too hard or putting in too many hours or too long at the gym or too long in this or too long in that, she just grabs me and says, hey, you're going too deep, right? Time to bring it back, right? Play with the kids for an hour or something like that, right? And just pulls me back into it, man. At a high level operator situation like you're in, you couldn't afford probably to have that situation happen, right? I mean, you had guys counting on you, different shit like that. That's your burden. Hopefully you can overcome that. Hopefully your wife is there to kind of help you get through that. But we all need our outlets, and how we manage them without taking advantage of them is what separates, people who can enjoy and then people who become dependent. And, being occupied in the moment, being able to slow down, smell the roses, right? That's how we kind of occupy the moment instead of let the moment occupy us, right? Instead of being driven by the circumstances and having to react to what's going on in front of us, just understand that, hey, I don't have to react, right? An absence of a reaction is not a reaction. Or it is a reaction. It's the reaction of absence. You're just, hey, it's happening, right? Yeah. And the difference is being able to go from 0 to 100 when you need to, right? And I think that's where I'm tying it back into firearms here a little bit. That's where the training that you offer, these dynamic trainings, these CQB type trainings, these different in the moment trainings is what I think is missing in a lot of people's everyday firearms training. And what I mean by that is, here in Maryland, at least, guys will show up and girls, people, whatever they want to call themselves, individuals show up. All right. In today's culture. And they have to, in Maryland, you have to take your handgun qualification, license. You have to get that. And to get that, you have to have some level of training. So people will come out and they'll take HQL. They'll be licensed. They'll have their certificate. They've just paid their fine to exercise their right. And they go and they buy their firearm, and then that's it. You never see them again, right? It's like, and so when we're on the range, I always hint at these people, be like, you did really good there, standing here in front of this paper target and firing one live round. But understand when, you know, you're sleeping in the middle of the night, all the lights are off, right? And maybe you walked through your house and locked all the doors or whatever and beep, beep, you know, set the car alarm or something and went up to bed. At 3 o'clock, when you hear someone busting down the door, that one live round, good luck, man. You need more training. You need more training. If you really want to buy this firearm for self-defense or for the defense of your family, you got to get some training. And that's what we try to offer, right? We always start with the HQL, and then we try to bring them into, you know, concealed carry, holstering, basic pistol, advanced pistol, the carbine stuff, right? Some dynamic drills and stuff like that. We're on no level of what you're doing. I mean, neither of us, of the instructors here at PTP are, you know, black belts in jiu-jitsu. We don't do that. We bring in other people to try to teach that stuff. Currently, we have Tara Graff. She's a Bellator MMA fighter. She, I don't know if you know who that is. She's female. But she does some of that stuff for us now.
Awesome.
It's about, you're never going to be prepared for that situation, no matter what. And maybe if you're a high level operator or something like that, and or a police officer or anybody who's been in that situation before, you could begin to, I guess, to feel more comfortable in it. But everyday Joe's me. I've never been in a gunfight. You know, I pray to God my training is adequate. And that if the time ever comes, I'm ready for that. But I know for a fact I wouldn't have been there without the training that I've taken, right? That one single round shit, that ain't going to get you there, right? That one day on the range once a year, that's not going to get you there, right? You need that repetitive training. So what you're doing out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, I did just a little bit of pulling up on you to try to figure out what exactly it is you're teaching out there in Tennessee. And you work for Asset, is that right? Or do you do just subcontract for them, or who is it you train for?
Owner. I'm the vice president.
Okay, that's your company.
So that's my company, but I'm not the majority owner. I'm the president. My partner Bill, he's the majority owner, and I worked with them when I first was getting out, just doing consulting and doing some security stuff, and then we ended up hitting it off, and then I became one of the owners. And that's basically the difference in Asset and Instructor Zee is this is under the same company. It's a DBA, but Asset is more the organizational providing part of the company. And then this is more the open enrollment, civilians or whoever part of the company. And that's where my heart was. And I was like, you know, I still do the training. I still teach. We teach mobility. I do organizational training for church security and stuff like that through Asset. Right. But my bread and butter and what I'm passionate about the most is everyday people, everyday survival. That's it. Right. So that's how that goes together.
So 2016, when you got out, you saw this stuff that was going on Instagram, the other, you know, those little mobs of pockets of people that were interested in firearms. You decided to start training. How did that start? Did you have buddies that were doing it and you kind of, you know, said, hey, how do I get started in this? Or did you one day just put, you know, staple a flyer to the freaking, you know, telephone pole outside and say, come to Zee's garage and we'll get you squared away? Like, what happened? How'd it go?
So this is kind of interesting. Like my buddy, a good friend of mine was the non-commissioned officer in charge of the local 5th Special Forces Group school. That is their main school for teaching guys when they first come to a team. It's called SFALIC, which is an acronym for Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat Training. And it's funny though, because it is, they make jokes, all the instructors there, they make jokes that it should be called the Special Forces Basic Urban Combat Training, not advanced, because really you're teaching a lot of guys how to shoot pistol. Like some of them come from different backgrounds and maybe they're pretty good with a rifle or carbine because they had an infantry background or whatever. But nobody's shooting a bunch of pistol. So we have to teach them that because everybody carries a sidearm. We got pistols. So I started being kind of like an adjunct instructor with him because I was on my way out and I had all this terminal leave. So I was still in the Army technically, and he had the schoolhouse, so I'd help him teach CQB because he and I were on a team together doing the same type job. And I started doing that stuff, and I started, I got a flair for it. I mean, I was a leader for a long time in the military because of, the rank system. And that's essentially what you are. You're a teacher, right? If you do good at it, it's not all, just yelling and fussing at people. You got to teach this guy. Like, you're going to get, and your experience in the military, I'm sure you saw the same thing, where you get different calibers of people. And it's the same in special forces as it is in any part of the military. You get guys that are like up here, and then you get guys that are kind of down here. And then you need everybody to kind of jive on the same level to be able to do whatever you're trying to do. And you get that in special forces, and you get different guys that can't do this or do that. And you're like, well, you got to, all that your job encompasses, I want the gun stuff to be second nature to you. It should be subconscious. That gun stuff's just got to happen. We can't be having you figure out how to work guns, how to implement guns and be safe and effective when you got all these other things going on, because it's a big world out there. I mean, you got a lot of responsibilities. I mean, we got to be responsible for everything. We got to be responsible for feeding ourselves, whatever your particular job was on the team, driving, fixing the machines that break, if that's what happens, because you're out on your own a lot. So it's like gun stuff, second nature. It's got to be driven into you. And you didn't see that. And I felt like I had a good way of explaining things and talking about it. And I have a passion for it. I got a passion for teaching, because I feel, I guess I approach people the same way I approach my own self inside. I'm like, this is what it is. This is how you do it. How do I teach myself? How do I maintain my ability to learn? Mm-hmm. And I see that in them, and then I break it down simple. I simplify things in my head. So I take things that are complex and I twist it and I simplify it for me. And I've seen that works for other people. It's like, hey, how can I stop, get all the shiny lights out of their face and just simplify everything for them, so they can just see this, this, and this, and go from there. Because a lot of times the obstacle in people's way for learning is that there's too much other stuff going on, or whether it be the fear of being in a group, or whatever they feel about themselves, or whatever the case may be. They need to just, let's focus on this part, this simplified part right here. And you don't have to be a ninja to do that. And like you said, where science is out there, one science for all those 7.5 billion or however many people you said there were in the world, one science. Well, there's really only one logical way one logical process for how people retain skills. You know what I mean? That's really only one way. I mean, you might get it differently. Some things, the way it's presented, are different are better for various people, but right. It's really, hey, you start with this part, you understand that, and then you add this, and then you add this, and then it's the same thing throughout. Like, so that's all you're doing.
Yep.
And so my buddy that taught that school, he took me in, and I don't know if you ever heard this guy on Instagram, True Exodus.
I have not, but I'm going to look him up. I'll write his little name down here.
What's the word I'm looking for? I guess he's a polarizing figure in the Instagram world. Some people love him because he can shoot good and he's got a character and personality, but he doesn't really have a background. So some people shit on him because they're like, who are you to be teaching all this stuff? The same guys which I don't dig this, like they're veterans or something. They think that just because, you're in the military, you get to tell everybody else that they don't know what they're talking about because you served, which I don't dig that shit either. Like, that has nothing to do with how good you are at teaching or knowing how to shoot guns. I mean, they're not one and the same. They're not synonymous. Soldier and teacher, or soldier and guy that's great with shooting. It's right. Not synonymous like people think it is.
Right.
But his name's Barrett Fallbush. He's a preacher, and we went up and did like this charity shoot little thing with him. And I went up and I was out of practice because I was doing the desk thing for a little while. But I did it, and he's the one that actually showed me Instagram and how much people were like getting all on this Instagram thing with shooting.
Sorry, don't mind me. No, problems, no problem. I just had to get my charger there. That's it. No worries.
But that guy showed me, and then I was like, oh, okay. And then I also realized how good he could shoot. I seen that firsthand. There's a guy that could shoot real good, but didn't understand all the context and all the strategies involved with actually defending yourself. So I seen there was a disconnect there, right? So that just made it. I was like, man, you know, I shoot pretty damn good. I don't have to be the best at shooting because I do have a subconscious skill set there. Now, how could I tie that in with all these people that say that they're shooting for, or they're learning to shoot for self-defense reasons, but they really don't know what that entails. They don't know what that's about, really.
Right.
So how can I put those two together, you know, and like kind of give my experience, my knowledge, take some of the physiological and the psychological stuff that I've learned along the way, add that in there. And I take from other guys that teach. I see how they're teaching. Mick from Carry Trainer. I see he's been doing it way longer than I have, and he's way more popular and way more, I guess, national. He travels a lot, goes all over the place. He's really helped me with my exposure. But I take something from every one of those guys, and I see how better to teach the students, the audience that I'm talking to, right? So I don't know if I got all the way back to answering your question or not, but
that's where you started at. So after after 2016, you started teaching at the basically Special Forces entry school there, and then kind of connected with Barrett Fallbush here and decided to start training. Did you like open your own schoolhouse, or, you know, what was the next step? When did you commit fully, you know, sit down with your wife and say, hey, look, I'm training now. I'm going to be a firearms instructor or a self-defense instructor. Like, that's a big decision.
Yeah, that's probably, well, another thing I added too was Carl from Tactical Rifleman. He's on Instagram, and he was my sergeant major in the military. I call him Uncle Carl. He lives about 40 minutes from me, but he had already gotten out, right? He's older than me. He was gotten out, and he had already got this little following on, and he got these people that latched on to him, and he was making YouTube videos, and it got pretty popular, right? I mean, he's got over maybe 500,000 subscribers now. I don't remember, but he wanted me. I stayed in touch with him, and we started doing special operations experiences. So if I could go get paid $500 a day stateside to go hang out with people and show them a few things here and there, I would do that. So that was like contract work down at Tier 1 group down in south of Memphis and Arkansas, across the river. So he got me into that, and then he stated like, hey, we're going to do classes. We're going to start teaching classes too. The stuff that we talk about on these videos, I don't want people, he has the same mindset I have, like, hey, videos are great and whatever, you know, makes the money flow or whatever. But the truth is, you know, people need to go experience things and do these things. Like, right. You can't just watch a video, especially if you don't have a baseline. So he's like, let's go teach. And I was like, all right. Well, I talked to my wife, and she wasn't keen on me traveling a lot. So I told him, as long as you're local and it's not too far, she agreed that every now and then I could go teach with him. And we go as far as Louisville. He'll go down to Texas and do other things, but I don't travel that far with him. And so he kind of got me into that formal training arena for civilians. And then I was like, well, I can do my own thing. And I had asset then. I was involved with assets. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? You know, well, my little niche was I was going to train locally here, and I'm going to make it affordable for people. So they think, you know, I figured with my background and credentials, people hold that in high regard, which I tell them the truth. It don't mean anything really. I mean, yeah, I've got some experience, but it doesn't mean I'm automatically the magician with freaking guns.
And also doesn't mean that you could communicate your experience in a manner that they could absorb and then replicate, as you mentioned. Yeah. Just because you're a senior NCO don't mean you're a good teacher.
No, of course not.
Right.
So I've been working on that, but I seen that was because I have that background, that's marketable.
Right.
But I didn't want to travel, and I'm not trying to break the bank, make a whole lot of money. And I'm not trying to use up all my time because I help my wife. She's a private investigator. She got her own company. I still got 3 kids at home, 2 that's grown and out. So I was like, well, I'll do like 4-hour classes is what I started doing. I called them tune-up classes. I was like, well, let's call them tune-ups. That way it's easier on the person's ego. So I'm not trying to teach you everything. Just come and tune up what you already know. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to get you. Come on and tune up a little
That's
bit.
a good idea.
And then when I get my hands on you, and maybe I can help you realize, that you had a little, some unconscious incompetence going on where you didn't know what you didn't know. Right.
Right.
So, and we've all been there. We've
Yep.
all been there. Right. But it takes that sometime. I got to get you there. Like, come on in. And I started doing it locally myself. And it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I started doing it, like making a schedule for the first of the year for my own classes. And I still do Carl's, and I still work with Mick at Carry Trainer because I love those guys. And, I was part of it with them, but I also do my own thing. And it's somewhat selfish. I like to be in charge of what I'm teaching. I like it to do it my way. When I go with those guys, I'm playing second fiddle, and I don't mind playing second fiddle. It's not mine though. So I'll help out and I'll do whatever, but I want my own thing. I feel like I have a way that I like to do things, and that's what I wanted. So a couple of years now, so those two, Mickey, Carl, and the little bit of teaching I did before I got out officially led me on this path, and it's super easy, man. I love it because I'm on my own schedule. I never work for anybody again in my life if I can help it. Right. I decide when I schedule something, and if I don't, I don't. I still get money from the Army because I'm retired, and I got disability crap. My wife still got work. I'm not broke. My kids are fine, and I'm not hating going to work. I'm not dreading doing things. I run my website. I put out the information. I run my social media. I do the training. A lot of times, until my wife started helping me, or unless I agree to do bigger classes, I do the whole class by myself. I set it up. I pace targets. I do everything, and that's the way I like it though.
That's so
everything's
cool, man.
ran the way I want.
That's so cool that you're not a slave to your job, right? You make a decision. Hey, I want to do this shit because it's fun. I enjoy doing it. I'm not a slave to it. That's cool. That's a unique opportunity that you have also, right? Some people, man, they're fucking slave to the grind. So that's fortunate that you're able to do that.
Very thankful for that.
Yeah. God bless you, man. There's a couple things here I pulled from your website that I thought were pretty cool that I'd like to ask you about. So right there, basically first page, you've got a quote on there, and maybe you could tell us why this is on your website. It says, "It's not what you've done, it's what you do." And that's by Sergeant First Class Carnahan. Why is that on your website, man? What does that mean?
Well, when I was in infantry, I did 3 years on the line platoon, which is, anybody that knows the infantry in the Army is like, the grunts in the line. And then I did 3 years in a scout platoon, which is reconnaissance. And that was kind of like, in the battalion, that's kind of like the high speed guys that you wanted to be a part of, right? Because they train more and they look cool or whatever. And when I was in the scout team, we went through about 2 or 3 different platoon sergeants while I was there. And one of the platoon sergeants was Sergeant First Class Carnahan, and he had come from Ranger Regiment. And he was a Regimental Reconnaissance Detachment, RRD, which is kind of their cream of the crop guys. They're guys that they look up to in their land. And this guy was an old, crusty son of a bitch. He was a skinny fucker, but he was smart as a whip. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how impressed I was with his abilities to do things. But he was a grumpy son of a bitch. Didn't get along with him personality-wise very well. Nobody really did, because he was very objective, very logical. Like, hey, do this, do it when I fucking tell you. That's it. Like, you know what I mean? But he was intelligent. He was very competent. So he gained our respect, even though we didn't necessarily want to hug him. And this guy told me one time, we seen him in his dress uniform, right? And he didn't talk about himself a lot. He was a very fucking private man as far as his personal life and shit. He just came and did his job. And we seen him in his dress uniform, and he had badges. I mean, he had lettuce everywhere, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, shit, you didn't even know what it was. And we're like, holy shit, this guy. And we had been working with him up until that point, didn't realize that he had all these things. I mean, we knew he was fucking good guy and had this background and did these things, but we didn't know to what extent.
Right.
So we seen him in his regular uniform, and this is, might not be allowed nowadays, but in most military, they'll make you wear whatever shit you got. Well, he never wore anything. He wore like a sterile uniform. He just wore what he was made to wear. Like, he wore, your unit patch, and he had his name tapes in the U.S. Army. And we asked him one time, it was me and the other squad leaders. We're like, Sergeant Carnahan, like, why do you not wear your stuff? Like, and we wasn't looking for anything philosophical. We just really didn't know why. And he said, and this is the way he thought, it's not what you done, it's what you do. And I think he had a different way of thinking like that. He was a little too logical, right? And I think you truly believe that. He don't give a shit what you did. He's like, what are you doing now? Like, you should be, this is what you did. He didn't give any respect to these people that were resting on their laurels and try to use some title as a excuse to fucking, lay up and not do shit. And I seen that. I remember that to this day. And then it came back to mind when I got out and I seen that the high regard that people give these soldiers or give these people with these backgrounds, and everything is about, hey, this guy did this, this, and this. And it truly, to me, knowing myself as a person and knowing who I am and that I'm a shithead like anybody else, I'm like, what does that mean? That doesn't mean shit. Like, I understand it looks good on a resume or get you in a door or whatever, but you still got to produce.
Yep.
You still got to produce, and it don't come from anywhere. It doesn't come from a piece of paper. Whatever you get out of my services to you does not come from that paper. It comes from the work I'm putting in. Right. That's it. And that resonated with me, and I'll never forget it. It don't matter what you did. It matters what you do now. What are you doing with it?
I love it. I mean, that's profound. And it's definitely something to live your life by, just my own experience here, I didn't do shit as a kid. Moved out early, started building houses and shit, and did that for a while. But, like yourself, and we talked about this a bit, I just kind of had to be the best at everything I did for some reason to a fault, right? And just kept going and going and going and trying to be the best and be the best and be the best. And and it's like, what's next? It was always that what's next philosophy. I don't think I had that really in me to kind of, reach back in my bag and say, this is what I've done. You should give me this job because of this is what I've done before. It was more like, this is what I'm going to do. Right. It was, everything was always moving forward. I think, again, that's just something inherent that a lot of leaders, organic leaders, have in them. They're looking forward, not looking backward. But there's that shit you got to do along the way. Right. I mean, each one of those little things, I went back to college. I went back to college at 32 years old. That's young for some people. It's old for others. I felt I was the oldest guy in the classroom. Right. And, I just did it. I just did it because it was a test. It was one more check in the box I had to do to get the job that I wanted. It wasn't, and I did really good at it. But I don't, carry that around and say, look what I did in college. No, that's behind me. That's not what this life's about. It's not that. It's next. It's what's next. So when I read this on your website, it's not what you've done, it's what you do. I said, man, that's profound. That resonated with me. That's why I wanted to bring it up here, man. And whoever this Sergeant First Class Carnahan guy is, I think we all know. I think everybody knows Sergeant First Class Carnahan, right? At least a little bit. There's always that guy that doesn't take any shit, holds you accountable, doesn't necessarily make sense. And hopefully they're a good leader. But everybody's got that guy in their life.
Well, he's stuck with me all my life thus far. So, and the good thing about that saying too, I've realized as I've gotten farther away from that shithead that I used to be, right? It works both ways. Like, it's not talking about just doing good things and then riding off those laurels. It's also the bad things you've done, right? Don't matter what you did, you can always you can move forward. You can start now. Like, I was a shitty husband, a shitty dad for a long time. I was a shitty soldier when I first joined the Army because I still had habits that were ingrained in me. And it didn't matter what I did. It matters what I did from that point on, right? So it works both ways in me, and it just means a lot. That's
another good way to look at it. And you hit on something there too, Some people, they mystify the American soldier and stuff like that. And soldiers, we're like, don't do that, right? If you were a shitbag, I remember day one at initial entry, they said, look, they said, lock your shit up, right? And we're like, why, right? Everybody here is going to be trustworthy. We're all soldiers now. And they're like, nope, if you were a piece of shit before you got in the Army, you're going to be a piece of shit on, day two when you get here. If you were a thief before, you're probably going to be a thief again, right? Tactically acquire your battle buddy's gear. And it's like, man, But there is no mysticism. Everybody's on an equal playing field. You know, it's just our job is a little bit different. My job was, even though we both served in the Army, your job was different than my job. You know, there's a lot of people. It's just another population. It's the same population of people just doing different work. There's nothing different necessarily. I mean, there is some inherent value that you get by, you know, raising your hand and going and doing the job. But yeah, you're not somewhat automatically some kind of badass just because you swore an oath. It's just not that. It's not that, guys.
And that's what I want to do, demystify this stuff. Like, and not to the point where I don't give respect and honor to where it's due, right? I respect and honor the people that work hard in any profession, really. But I just don't want it to be this world of sensationalism and social media where, and it's the same, it's just a human reaction to things. Like, we want something sensational. We want something that's, you know, mystical, and you don't know the background, and this person's like this, and he doesn't have the same human makeup as us because he's cold as ice and he's freaking this. And that looks great in movies. Jason Bourne is awesome. John Wick, freaking awesome if that was real. But it's not real, you know, and it takes work to get there. A real John Wick would have a shitty personal life, I'm sure. Right? Freaking. But you like, don't, I basically say that I want people to know because I know where I came from, and I would be one of the people that most of my friends would least expect to be where I am now, right? Because of the way I was. And I also don't want it to be an obstacle for people to go out and get training or to realize their own potential, right? Well, I didn't do this. I didn't do this, so I can't be this. Like, fuck that.
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can.
You can. Like, you don't. You won't be, you know, whatever title unless you go through the process to gain that title, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be capable of doing the things that title speaks to. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how it is.
No, you're right. You know, I fucking dropped out of high school at 16 years old, man. Never thought I would ever go to college, ever. I built houses and installed custom cabinetry until the 2008 recession hit. Everybody lost their shit, and all of a sudden people didn't need houses anymore. Right. And for me, military was a necessity, right? I needed something to pay the bills. And I had kids. I was married, right? I needed something. That's my story of joining the military, right? It wasn't because I had some burning desire to fucking, kill Hajis. It wasn't that. I needed to provide for my family. That was something. That was my next move.
It was you. You had to take care of yourself. And yours.
Right. Yep. And that was something. And, in 2014, when I got out, it was, what's next? I knew I needed to get a good job. I knew I needed to provide for my family, continue to provide for my family and stuff. And I got a GED. I passed the ASVAB, right? I did well enough to become a mechanic. And then it was like, all right, what's next? And I could have been whatever, done the traditional route. And this isn't knocking anybody out there in the audience, but I could have went and got like a business administration degree or something and went and crunched numbers or something like that. But in the service, right, I saw some really failed engineering. Right. I saw the lowest bidder getting the job. I saw, although I was in infantry, I saw a lot of my battle buddies and stuff, my brothers and sisters in arms, that their gear was fucking them up, and then working on, tactical vehicles and different stuff like that. I could see the engineering. It's, man, this is beating the shit out of people. I don't know a single guy who did 6 years in the Army that doesn't come out with a bad back. It's just the way it is, unless you're a fucking paper pusher or something like that. But it's like, what can we do here? There's got to be, and so that's why I was like, I'm going to go be an engineer, right? Dropped out of high school at 16. Now I'm going to go be an engineer. And I did it. And again, I'm not bragging. Anybody could do this, right? If you're out there, get your ass, and you want to do what I do, go do the things I did to get there. And because it's possible. And kicked ass. And now I kick ass at what I do now, right? Because that's what I do. I try to kick ass. But yeah, anything's possible, man. And trying this back in, it's not what you've done, it's what you do. It doesn't matter if you're a piece of shit. It doesn't matter if you're a shitbag. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday, right? It's, if you want to do something, don't let that past define you. Walk through that door, step through that door. Another thing I like about you, Zee, is although your face and your personality, you seem mighty put together and partially reserved, very stoic, right? And but I did some digging on you and went and found some of your YouTube videos. I'm actually going to pull that up here on the stream here. All right. So bear with me a minute. Make sure I got the right one here. See, you'll be able to watch this with us. Let me pull this up, Bob. All right.
Oh,
you tell me if you remember this. Yeah. So, this is firearms training. I'm not going to play the whole video. You guys want to watch this, search up Instructor Zee on YouTube. This is his, the fluid carbine, video, right? Where he talks about, over shoulder, under shoulder, different stuff like that. But he doesn't take himself too serious. And that's what I'm trying to say. And you got to watch this video here to get a flavor of that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and play here. Yes.
It's Danny DeVito there.
Yes, it is. It's Danny DeVito. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't take yourself too serious, man. You make it fun, right? And that's a whole nother aspect of instruction that is just, sometimes it's just missing. You get out there and it's just like everybody's squared away and they're wearing their fake ass body armor or whatever it is, or they're, they got 30 mags on them or something. It's like, all right, we're doing one live round. What are you doing, guy? You're taking yourself too seriously. What are you trying to do? You're not a superhero. You're fucking range guy. All right, let's do range guy stuff. And there's a time and a place for all that gear. There really is, right? And if you feel like you're ever going to be in a tactical situation where you may need your duty belt and your body armor and all that stuff, wear it. Train with it if you think that that's going to better prepare you for your situation. But don't be, ranger hero out on the range. Anyhow, what I like about you, Zee, is that you just don't seem to take yourself too serious, right? Like that's really cool, man. What's with the flavor? All right. Like this video, you got this old school music jam, and you're not much older than me. I'll be 39 like in a month. You're not that much older than me. This is some like disco music. This is like that 90s. Yeah. I almost want to play. Go ahead, man.
Skating ring. The skating ring music. I remember when I used to be at the skating ring bouncing. I don't know. What I do is I'm looking at social media and I'll see, those reels or TikToks where people use certain sounds.
Yes.
And it inspires me. I'm like, oh, I want to use that sound, man. It's been a long time since I heard that. And my daughter, that Danny DeVito, is a cutout. My 16-year-old, she's 16 now. I think she was 15 when she did that. She's like, hey, can I use the printer to print some stuff? I'm like, yeah. Next thing you know, we out of ink. She printed all those little squares of Danny DeVito and made a stand-up, a big cutout of Danny DeVito, and he's on cardboard. And and we had some fun, like standing it up in the house and like people coming in and like, sticking it around the house. But now I got it out in the garage. I just sit it there. I'm like, well, if somebody comes in the garage, that's my it's my deterrent security. It's got Danny DeVito standing in there. So I just used him for the video. I was like, I need somebody's head to move around. So I freaking put Danny DeVito up there.
Well, that's cool. But what I like about it is you just spent, at this point in the video, you're about 7 minutes into it, and you really did show some good training material here, right? It was really cool. And then to just kind of demystify it, you're like, check me out, right? I'm kind of dancing. I'm doing the high ready, the low ready. I'm coming over his head. I'm clearing his head, right? Doing what do you call it there in the video, right? Muzzle ahead of meat. You're really, locking it in and stuff. And it's just like, you just demystified it. You made the pass, although the first, 6.5 minutes were cool. You kind of took it to the next level. You're like, all right, guys, let's put it all together here, right? I love it. You don't take yourself too serious, man. That's really cool. I got to ask another question here. So sometime I watched another video of yours. It was hilarious as shit. And whoever you got advising you on this stuff is doing a good job. Like your tagline is like, appendix carry, you're gonna shoot your pee-pee or something like that. I thought that was hilarious, man. But you've got like all these different like pop-ups in the video and stuff. Are you making your own videos? Is this all Zee here? You got your kids helping you or something?
That's why it's so terrible, man. Because I won't put a lot of effort into like that high-tech stuff. I got some better stuff now. My wife bought me lights and shit, but I do it on my phone. All that was done right on my iPhone. I just did it on iMovie, and I just added the stuff and I went on that particular one. I just went overboard with the pop-ups. I was like, this is so dry and boring. I just need to add pop-ups everywhere. Like I just figured I added pop-ups in there.
You're your own worst critic, man. Yeah, you always will be. You always be your own worst critic, man. I thought it was pretty cool, clever. It's appealing to not only the kind of the old fuds in the room, but the young guys too. I think you're on target. I really do. I love it, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, brother. I get inspired sometimes, and I just like I said, I'm not an entertainer, and I'm not going to fucking spend all my time, worrying about what's the best way to present this or that. I'm just going to do it, and I'll help it be a little bit more consumable. If it's funny or whatever, that's all I care about, and I don't really care about the rest of it. Like, if I compare myself to other videos, I see how terrible they are, and I see how the quality and all that shit. But I'm like, well, I mean, whoever could get it will get it, and if they don't, they don't. Like, there's plenty of shit out there, right? And even in the video stuff, Carl wants me to make videos and come up with ideas, and I'm like, bro, I was like, I'm in this. I'll do stuff like people ask me questions, and I'll look at it on YouTube, and I'll like, instead of spending an hour talking to a person or writing a paragraph or two, I'll like just send them to a video that I think is a good video. Like, I don't care if I support that person. I just look through it, and if I think it's good information, I was like, why do you want me to regurgitate everything? I agree with this.
Yep.
Like, I don't need to show you this. So I also, I struggle making stuff like that, because I'm like, well, what's something that I don't think is out there and said a lot? Yeah, I'm motivated about that. But if it's the same old shit that everybody's saying, like, you can go anywhere on YouTube and figure out, what is trigger reset? You can figure it out.
Yep.
And depending on, I'm not saying everything out there is viable and vetted, but I mean, there's plenty of things out there, and I don't get motivated about just telling you the same old shit. Just like, hey, well, Zee said it like this. And I think people do that too much in this industry in particular. They're like, it's all about, which is a problem in general for men and a problem in general for the culture that I came from professionally. Instead of trying to be better, you just try to put others down and show how you're better than them, and that you think that makes you better, right? And it's really you're challenged by them, or you feel threatened by their ability to do whatever, and you try to bring them down lower instead of bringing yourself up higher, and I don't like that. And I see it in myself, and I know every person does. I look at shit sometimes, and there's shit I'll say internally or to somebody in my close circle, like, this motherfucker. But then I'm like, I mean, I'm not going to put a whole lot of thought into it and go into like, well, let me go talk about this guy and how he does this and that. Like, bro, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me to do that. People putting each other down in the firearms industry, a lot what you're talking about, building a network and guys that are good and expanding on this and making sure people can get access to good training. Like, we need to be building each other up. And if we want to talk about something, if you think there's a real concern, then talk to that person directly. If you're not talking to them directly, then you're really not concerned about them at all. You're concerned about what you're getting out of it. So people do like public comments and shit like that to boost their own look of intellect
or authority. They're trying to borrow authority from other people. Now, Zee, I'll let you know, I ain't trying to borrow anything from you, man. You could have said no to coming on the podcast.
Oh, no.
No hard feelings. You know what I'm saying? I understand what you're saying, and it is true.
I don't like the dog eat dog mentality.
No.
Everybody's just trying to put somebody else down.
Nah, man, there's enough food for all of us to eat. You know what I'm saying? And there's no one, I don't think anybody respects or appreciates those guys that you're talking about. And I don't know them by name or anything like that. There's just that group of people, right?
I'm not talking about anybody
exactly.
specific either.
They feel better by just, putting everybody else around them down. And those are toxic. Those people need to just be cut away from the fabric of society. I don't think anybody wants to be that. And that's why, all right, I'm trying to tie this back here. That's why I like what it was that you did on your video. You don't take yourself too serious, man. I mean, you're this guy dancing at with the high ready, What's your kind of maneuver, if you will, to removing somebody's ego?
Well, one thing, I will say this, that I don't really, if I see somebody and I identify like some red flags of somebody that might have some ego things going on, I don't really, unless something forces me to interact with them directly about that situation, I don't really talk to them about it at all. But one thing that I try to do is I utilize whatever mystique they give me, and I try to break that down by being transparent to show. I basically come to them with an offering first. Here's my offering of being humble, showing you some of my humility and some transparency into me. And I try to use that to kind of, bring them in. So maybe it empowers or gets them thinking like, all right, well, this guy, if they paid money to come train with me or see me or do whatever, and then I'm being using humility like I try to do, and they see that, maybe that kind of breaks down the walls in them, you know what I mean? So it's like almost like setting the example. And I'm not saying, I'm the example to be set. I'm just saying that I just bring it to them first. Like, here's what I'm looking for, right? I do this, and then I also talk about it a lot. Anytime I do my classes, I talk about it right off the bat. I'm like, we got egos, those are things that are going on, and this is, and I tie it in with the physiological effects of stress and fighting for your life. I'm like, if you can't, look past an ego or look past the pressure of having to perform in front of around other students that you don't know, and you're so worried about that being a problem, like you're probably not going to be able to be very effective when there's real things to be concerned about, like dying, and all the things that go along with that. So I'm like, let's get past that. And I try to hit it off right at the beginning. Like, hey, if you're somebody shooting faster than you, this drill that I had you do, and you hear somebody shoot bang, 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 and for you to be accurate, you're over here shooting bang, bang, bang. I'm like, you got to cut that out. And I tell them, and I admit to them, I know I'm the same person that will hear somebody shooting fast and think that I got to shoot as fast as them, and then my target does not look as good as theirs because I let that bother me. I let that influence what I'm doing, and that doesn't help me at all. Let me just stick to what I'm doing over here. And I tell them stories about that with me, and I try to identify with them. And I think a lot of them, it resonates with them. They see that, hey, well, this guy's supposed to know all these things and whatever made them think that they should come and train with me. And I'm sitting here telling them that I'm fucking up. Right. I fuck up, and I've been the guy that fucking has had an ego. I've had a false sense of confidence. And so me understanding that, what that mindset is, I also, when I see guys doing that, if I see a guy in my class that looks like things are not getting through to him because he continues to do what he feels comfortable doing and what, preserves his ego or whatever the hell it may be, I just don't direct my attention towards him as much. Like, I figure, like, my class, I feel a pressure to somebody to learn something in my classes every time. I mean, I think that's the plight of a teacher. You want to give somebody some information that they can use. It's not always going to be the same information for every person.
Right.
But I just turn my attention away from them a little bit because I'm like, well, if he's not in the place right now that allows him to gain something, I've been that same young person in classes where people had really good knowledge to give me, and I just wasn't receptive of it because I had my mind elsewhere. Like, so if that's the place they're in right now, I mean, I'm not going to let it keep me up at night. Like, I'm just, that person will get his path. He'll figure it out if he continues to seek the truth about himself and go and do bigger and tougher and harder things. He'll figure out what humility is, right?
Yeah.
So
hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, if he doesn't, he doesn't. I mean,
yeah, I
feel bad for him if they don't, but you need to go seek things that are hard, face failure. That's another thing, I heard, I guess we know all this stuff. It's just, at certain ages, and you said you're what, 38, 39?
Yep.
So, you realize at certain ages, things that we might have heard all our life, cliche things, whatever, they don't make sense to a certain time in your life. Like, I'm just now learning a lot of these things. I'm like, that's why those sayings are cliche, because they've been around for fucking ever, because at some point humans realize that this thing is fucking true.
Yeah.
and it goes on to the next generation, and I'm passing it on to my kids, and my kids are like, well, I don't give a fuck what you're saying. Right. So
it'll come back, right? It'll come back to them at some year.
Yeah. They'll come back, and one day they'll say, we appreciate that. And hopefully it resonates with them. But I learned, and I truthfully believe this, that there is no progress without failure. There is no progress without failure. It's not possible to be successful in everything. Not if you're living in the real world and you're not living in la la land. There is no progress without failure. I have to fail. So that being said, guys like me that are extra critical of themselves and super wound tight as it comes to performing and being good all my life, like, I have to just embrace it and be like, and that's my saving grace when I have to deal with that failure. When I mess up, hey, Z, remember, you needed that apparently, because that's going to help you be better next time. So that's what happened. it's almost like a stoic mindset approach, right? Like, hey, don't worry about what you can't control, worry about what you can control. And, you know, the failure already happened. Whatever's in the past has happened. How am I going to get something from that?
Right.
And now I look at it as a benefit for me. It's beneficial for me. It's not the end of the world for me and says that, hey, you're not worth a shit, Zee, because you failed. It's a thing that says, hey, this is something. Now you've got the key to help you improve in that area. You just got that. That's beneficial for you now. So there you go.
That's so true, man. Yeah. Failure is a big part of life. It's part of growth, right? You know, you look at some plants, right? You got to prune them to make them grow better, right? If you don't prune them, they end up dying. And that's, you know, you trim away, you trim it by failure. You gain, you learn not to repeat that. You learn to do something a little bit different, right? That's kind of the pruning of the bush. And eventually you've got a really nice, healthy plant there because you pruned away all the bad shit. The only reason you knew it was bad because it was fucking you up, either through failure or through, you know, things that you weren't observing in your life, right? Failed relationships, fucking lost jobs, lost friends, different stuff. And eventually you slow down, you realize, well, shit, it was me, or it was this, it was something. I had to cut that away.
Well, and you're exactly right. And people, as simple as the concept as that is, logical mind, like you have to feel like you don't come out of the womb walking. You have to fall over and learn to walk. Like that's the same throughout your life. You don't just get things right off the bat, no matter how good you are. And as simple as that sounds, like people's egos are so fragile that at some points in their life, depending on who they are, where they can't accept it. They cannot accept it. And I've been that person where it shattered me to be bad at something, to fail at something. And it's not like I wasn't failing. It's just I was hiding those failures. It was as long as nobody knew about those failures. You know, that was my saving grace at the time to help me get through and not be the end of me. But some people are just at that point where it's just what they feel about themselves is so fragile that they can't accept that simple concept that failure becomes. So they're not even seeing how beneficial it is. They're just fucking running from failure with all their might.
Yeah.
You know, because they can't handle it yet. It takes time. They're fragile still. And some people's fragility is, you know, maybe in their adolescence. Some people's is in their adulthood. And I think, you know, without getting too far into the weeds, I think a problem with the America in general right now is like we've got a lot of fragile adults in our culture now that are not learning. They don't have a reinforced emotional stability structure inside of them yet, like ideally they should as a child with a good family that had everything put into them that would be ideal, I guess. So they get to my age and like I'm a perfect example of that. You know, somebody that learned late to do this shit, and I fucked up a lot along the way, and I was fucking hanging by a thread fucking for most of that life. And as much as people would look at that paper we talked about earlier, hey, well, Zee, looks like you're doing pretty good because you did this and this and this. Like that had nothing to do with fucking what was going on inside of here.
Yeah.
You know, I was hanging by a thread, and a lot of times I fucking got to that breaking point, and you know, stupid shit happens. You drink too much, or you fucking do inappropriate things, or you fucking do whatever you do as your individual self. That's a fuck up. You know what I mean? So people just can't handle that information sometimes. You got to get to a point one day, and there's no training that I can give you that's ever going to get you there. It's just got to be heuristic, hands-on. You experience it, and you fucking go through it until one day it's fucking the light bulb goes off and says, hey, you're worth a shit. Now that you got that settled, can we focus on some other things that maybe improve your fucking whole life and improve the people around you? Right. Your family, the ones that count on you, instead of just being all up in here, being all fragile and shit. You know, so
well, you said a lot of stuff there, and you were starting to touch on something I actually wanted to kind of bring up a little bit here was, you know, putting yourself in a position to fail so that you can grow. A lot of people, you know, say that, you know, the only way to grow is through pain and through adversity and different stuff like that. It makes you a more well-rounded person. But we see this generation of kids that are growing up. You know, I've got a couple of kids. I've got 2 kids that are almost grown. Everybody gets a trophy, right? That philosophy. It's like you're removing failure from kids' life all you're doing is kind of setting them up for for some fucking substantial failure later in life. You know, kids need to understand that you're not always going to get a trophy. You're not always going to win. You're going to have to walk that in. And, you know, hopefully we can get past that. Zee, I've taken a lot of your time here, man. I appreciate you coming on the show. One last thing I want to ask you about. All right. Capable citizen. What is that? That's kind of on your website. I see your shirt. There's everyday survival, everyday people. How are the two related, right? What is a capable citizen? How do you make that happen?
So, in a nutshell, to me, well, everyday survival, everyday people, to me is like what we're talking about right now. Like I know you're not in a gunfight every day, right? You might be just trying to get out of fucking bed to go do something that you know needs to be done, and you just whatever anxiety, whatever shit's going on in your head is not letting you. To me, that's part of everyday survival. Just like, you know, dodging a wreck in an intersection. You know what I mean? That's everyday survival. Like, and then everyday people are doing everyday survival. So that means you, that means me, that means soldiers, law enforcement, wives, children, whatever your background, man that works in a grocery store or at a fast food restaurant. I don't give a shit what it is, man. Like, yeah, I don't look down on you. It's not a caste system. So it's everyday people, man. I'm just like you. Maybe I got some things figured out in this part of my life or part of human nature. And maybe you got some of these things figured out, you know, so it doesn't mean that I'm better than you or you're better than me or whatever. Like, we're everyday people. We're just trying to survive. And it ain't all about guns. It ain't all about fighting, even though I'm an advocate of that. It's about just every day, man. If you can't get this shit straight, like, why you even, you know, you ain't gonna know it yet, and I can't tell you. You'll figure it out. But to me, if the big picture is not straight, then why am I worried about these little fucking things? You know what I mean? Yeah. Who gives a fuck about surviving? I can't even fucking survive every day. I can't get past anxiety. What am I worried about self-defense for? But, you know, people's gonna do what people do. So that's what that's about. An incapable citizen, and you just see, I want people. I hit on it a little bit early on, and from my life experiences, what it was is I was a kid that didn't have a lot of instruction. I didn't have a dad and all these things that I feel like that I want my son to have, and I want kids to have in general. I didn't have it, and I learned it late, like simple things, you know, just learning how to change a tire, how to, I don't know, how to put together a paper, maybe, you know, how to write legibly, how to do an email that's, you know, doesn't sound ridiculous. You know, things like that. And that's what I mean by capable citizen. People want to, of course, what I do, they're going to tie that into self-defense type stuff and shooting. But that's not everything a capable citizen is. A capable citizen, at the heart of them, they know what the truth is, and they know where they're failing, they know where they're vulnerable, and they're addressing that. So I just want you to be capable for what you're doing, capable to get through whatever you're going through. And that's it. If that's a fight for your life, I definitely want you to be capable for that. If you carry a gun, you need to be capable of handling that gun proficiently and safely, obviously. If you drive a car, you need to be capable of driving well, right? You don't just get a license and just whip the car around. Like, so all that encompasses capable citizen to me. What has to be done in your life, and can you do it? Can you be an asset and not just be a liability to those around you? You know, just pushing forward and trying to do your best, man. And that's what I'm all about. That's awesome. I'm going to have to look more into that. Zee, before we cut you loose, man, where can people find you at? And of course, guys, audio only guys here. All of this stuff will be down in the show notes. If you want to look at what I'm looking at, what I've been looking at here for the past hour and a half, head over to the YouTube channel, PTP Firearms Training on YouTube. You'll be able to watch the video there. And then if you're not, go down the show notes and you'll be able to find all the ways to get a hold of Zee. But what are those places? Where can they get a hold of you at? So everything's pretty much Instructor Zee, and the Z is Zee. Funny, I did that at play on Instructor Zero. You remember Instructor Zero? I think so, but wasn't that? He was like the Italian. I think he's Italian, and he does all the quick shooting. Yes, it was big on. Yes, that's right. So that's where this came from, right? I was like, well, I'm Instructor Zee, but anyway, it's stupid and it's stuck. But Instructor Zee, everything, Facebook, Instagram, Instructor Zee website, InstructorZee.com. And then I partner up with Tactical Rifleman and Mickey Shook. We carry trainer a lot. Their YouTube channels are way more prominent than mine, so you'll see me on there sometimes. And I'm trying to steal some authority from them, trying to get some clout.
Do it, buddy. Zee, thank you so much for coming on the show, guys. We hope to talk to Zee in the future. After we hang up here, I'm actually gonna see if we can't get him out to come to Maryland and do some of his stuff out here. But I'm not gonna put that on the air, right? Because if he tells me no, I still want to act like he told me yes. So, guys, with that, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, we're out here.